What's up YouTube? Scott's Kind of Tradition back with another video. Thought it would be kind of fun with the NFL draft coming up in less than 2 weeks to talk about possibly the greatest NFL draft by any one team in NFL history. It's certainly up there, if not the best draft ever. And that's the 1958 NFL draft. And these are the Packers' first 4 picks from that draft. So you can see on the left you have Dan Curry, and then we have Jim Taylor, Ray Nitschke, and Jerry Cramer. So 3 of the top 4 draft picks ended up being NFL Hall of Famers, with Jim Taylor, Ray Nitschke, and Jerry Cramer. And Dan Curry was a multiple-time All-Pro, so no slouch either. So I just find it amazing that the Packers had a draft that produced 3 NFL Hall of Famers in their first 4 picks. I can't think of any other draft of any other team that was like that. If you guys can think of any, let me know. But I just thought it'd be cool to kind of showcase the rookie cards of those players. So on the far left, we have Dan Curry here. This is from 1959 Topps, one of my favorite football sets. This Dan Curry, I believe, is Pop 15 with only 3 graded higher. And he was a great player for quite a few years with the Packers. Like I mentioned, multiple-time All-Pro. And, of course, we have Jim Taylor. Although this is not the real Jim Taylor, they messed up the image on the card, but this is still considered his Hall of Fame rookie card. And this one has no examples graded higher. There has never been a 10 graded. I think the pop was like 23 on this or so last time I checked. So one of the top graded examples. And Jim Taylor, I mean, he led the Packers in rushing. I think he had over 1,000 yards, like 6 or 7 years. And also led the whole league in rushing in 1962. Probably would have led the league in rushing a whole lot of other years if it wasn't for a certain player named Jim Brown, who led that category most of the time. So, but Jim Taylor was a ferocious competitor. And then here's the 63 Topps Ray Nitschke rookie. Just love this card. This is in an 8.5. And Ray Nitschke, just a bruiser of a linebacker. He was like all pro, I think 5 or 6 times, but he only made 1 Pro Bowl for some ridiculous reason. I know Dick Butkus was around at the time, and Sam Huff, but I mean, how does Ray Nitschke make 1 Pro Bowl, but is all pro 6 times? That doesn't make any sense. But, you know, he definitely goes down in Packer lore for sure. One of the best defensive players of all time. And then, of course, I got the Jerry Cramer here, graded a 10. Only one of only 2 10s in existence, so he didn't have too shabby of a career. Obviously, just made the Hall of Fame a few years ago. Taylor and Nitschke made it quite a few years ago, and finally Jerry Cramer got in, which I would hope so. He was the only guy left from the NFL he was named the best guard in the NFL's first 50 years of football, and he was left off the Hall of Fame list until just recently. So it just goes to show you, sometimes the Hall of Fame voters get it wrong. And as far as the Nitschke goes, I want to say there are no 10s graded, and there are a handful of 9s, like 8 to 10 9s ever graded. So just a beautiful example in an 8.5. Centering is always an issue on that card. So I just thought I'd show some fun cards from my collection, and I want to talk about the man who's responsible for this draft, and his name is Jack Vainisi. He was director of player personnel, I believe would be his title, and a scout for the Packers. For many years, he joined the Packers in 1950, and right after college, he was only 23, and unfortunately he passed away in 1960. He was only 33 years old. And I feel like history has sort of forgotten Jack Vainisi. He played an instrumental role in bringing Vince Lombardi to the Packers. He convinced the Packers executive committee to give Lombardi a look, and he also convinced Lombardi himself to give the Packers a chance. So he was absolutely pivotal in that marriage. He even went as far as giving Lombardi the advice to ask for full control of the team because he knew that the Packers executive board would want to put their nose in the business of the coach. So Jack Vainisi, he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame as a contributor, not only for this draft here, but just for bringing Vince Lombardi to the Packers and kind of just forming that marriage. And it's sadly he died at only age 33 in 1960 of a rheumatic heart issue. So it's like everyone has just forgotten about Jack Vainisi, which is crazy. So I felt like I had to make a video about kind of just showing you how amazing this draft was in 1958 and the person who was responsible for it. And in addition to that, it wasn't just these players who he drafted. I'm going to take those down for a minute, and I'm going to throw up some other names you might find familiar of players that Jack Vainisi was essentially responsible for drafting. How about Bart Starr? Drafted Bart Starr in the 17th round. I mean, now that is finding a true gem, if you will, late in the draft. Back then, there used to be like 30 rounds in the draft, which is pretty crazy. There was less teams, but there was 30 rounds, and they did like one half, I believe, in early January, like the first few rounds, and then the rest of the rounds they did like, actually in early December, I believe they did the first 4 or 5 rounds, and then after that they did like the last 20 rounds or so, 25 rounds in late January. So they actually split the draft up in 2 different parts of the year. And then also this guy, he was responsible for drafting Paul Hornung. Now Paul Hornung might have been more of a no-brainer pick. He was the Heisman Trophy winner that year before. But Bart Starr is an absolute needle in the haystack for sure. And then also he was responsible for drafting Jim Ringo. All of these guys I'm showing you are NFL Hall of Famers. And also responsible for drafting Forrest Gregg, who Lombardi said was the best player he ever coached. So not too bad, Jack Vainisi's draft. Just going through the cards, have the Bart Starr in PSA 8. That's his rookie. There are only 3 graded higher, and they're all 9s. The Paul Hornung rookie is graded an 8. I believe there is maybe 10 or 12 graded higher, and they're all 9s. Got the Jim Ringo here. Last I checked, there was 4 graded higher. I think there's 2 8.5s and 2 9s, no 10s. And then the Forrest Gregg, there are none graded higher. I think this is pop 23 or so, something like that. And then I got one more here. This wasn't somebody who Vainisi drafted, but somebody who he signed as a free agent, because this guy was not drafted at all. And that's Willie Wood, who just passed away recently, but also an NFL Hall of Famer. Have this in a 9. Believe it's pop 16, 2 higher. So just looking at some of the names up here that Jack Vainisi had a part in drafting is just remarkable. So I hope you guys will all watch the draft. The draft is something I like to watch every year. The last couple years I watched it with a friend of mine, but I always tune in for the draft. Absolutely love it. Usually I'm disappointed by who the Packers pick, but that's here nor there. Usually what happens is the Packers are always picking in the lower 20s because they've always had pretty decent teams as of late, and they end up trading out of that pick, and I don't even get to see a draft pick on night 1 usually. So we'll see what happens. They have a lot of holes. I think they could go offensive tackle in this draft. They could go wide receiver again, corner. There's a number of places they could go, but they probably won't go. They'll probably trade up and get a quarterback again. Who knows? So hope you guys will tune in for the draft, and hope you enjoyed this video, learning a little bit about the history of the 1958 NFL draft, as far as the Packers are concerned, and a little bit of the history of Jack Vainisi, who I truly believe needs to be into the NFL Hall of Fame as a contributor. Thanks everybody for watching. Hope you have a great evening.